本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, internet? I don't use. What's good, internet? It's June 7th.
Hello, internet.
I was gonna say 6th, but it's the 7th, right? We say the date that it publishes.
Yeah, the day that it comes out.
Although
Although I guess technically it is currently, as it's being recorded, the day before.
Yeah, but I feel like that's one of those wave a magic wand. Have we always done that though? Now I'm wondering.
I'm thinking back. I think Rob always does the day that it comes out. Unless, of course, there's, question of like, when is that? Who knows?
Now I'm wondering if that's settled law.
I don't think it is. I think we can maybe settle it today if we want. While
Just tell
Rob's on.
Rob
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
Rob,
Rob.
we've actually decided we're gonna say, just to confuse ourselves in the audience, we're gonna say the date that we're recording it, not the date it comes out on. Just for funsies. But yeah, this is episode 487. Listen to Waypoint Radio. I am today your host, Patrick Klubig. I'm joined by our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
I think it's actually not for funsies. I think it's for truthies. It's for being truthful.
Truthies?
And
Well, I don't really like that. I'm not a huge fan of that word. That sounds like something Stephen Colbert would have said that was funny at the time and then has been revealed to be not great.
No.
And hello, Ren.
That was the podcast intro equivalent of someone spilling multiple drinks. That was incredible. I loved that.
Rob's so prepared. I'm just like, I don't know. I've got some text somewhere that I could read, I guess. And I do that in the hopes that, not in the hopes of knowing I don't listen to the podcast when I'm not on it. That's just, if I didn't record it,
Right.
I don't need to be there. Rob has historically listened to them. Is probably listening to this one, and I'm sure is just furious over the fact that I'm just have not carefully constructed my intro in the way that he does.
That
He's always very prepared.
That introduction had the same energy of someone like walking into a bar and dropping a stack of papers and being like, "My screenplay." It was incredible.
What?
Is this guy's?
My screenplay.
Are people doing that even in LA? They're just walking.
You've heard of making up a guy to get mad at? I will make up a guy to make fun of.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Y'all see this fucking nerd with a screenplay? What a dork.
Yeah, that's what the writer says.
Yeah,
I need this person to bully that had the audacity to write a screenplay. All right,
Okay, hold on though. The audacity
Yeah.
to print out a screenplay.
That's the thing.
Right, but in this
It's
scenario,
the fact that he
this
has
person is
printed
not.
the screenplay and is like walking around with a screenplay. This is on him.
See, I think they're doing this on purpose, though. Like, I think this is like, how do I get
It's
noticed?
a play.
How do I get
Ow, my screenplay!
My screenplay. Excuse
be-
me, sir. I see you picking up papers off the floor. I'm a producer.
Yeah.
Please show me.
Okay, so I promised a video. Okay, it's this one.
Oh, right.
All right, so this kicked off because Ren, very politely asked how I was doing. I said I was tired because I'd spent a chunk of my weekend moving rocks. Because we were putting some rocks around a big tree in our backyard to put some flowers and stuff. And I am. If anyone can write in, has a product of COVID in which lots of like building materials have gone up. Is that also true of rocks? Is like not inflation necessarily, but like the cost of production has put up like wood and some. I assume a lot of that stuff is still true. I was just sort of, how much do you think an individual rock costs? I mean, it's like a stone, right? So it's like a rectangle
What
thing. But like, how
size
much do you
of
think
rock?
one costs?
What size of rock?
Free. It's free because you can go out into nature and pick up a rock.
Okay, is the Home Depot considered nature?
No.
I mean,
It's
if
like
you
the
try
size
hard
of
enough, if you try hard enough, anywhere can be nature. You can pick up any rock.
Here, I'll show. I have a picture of the rocks. I took a
Please.
picture of the rocks.
Please.
They're kind of loafy. Have you
Loafy.
described this as a loaf, like a loaf of bread?
Sure.
Each one
loaf?
of those rocks is, I'm gonna guess.
That's a big rock.
It's a big
I'm
rock.
gonna guess $20 per rock.
Jesus
Per rock?
Christ. what the
$20.
fuck?
I make
You,
these money,
again,
Rem,
you
but
can get these in nature.
I would not be paying $20
You
per
can
rock.
get-
My God.
You sounded
You can go
incredulous about
deep
the
into the
cost.
woods and find a large cliff face and find a bunch of
Okay.
rocks.
I paid $2.30 a rock, like $2.30 a rock. Not
That still seems like a lot to me,
$20.30.
but okay.
It was. Yes, that's. But my wife has a much better sense of like style and aesthetic, and I was like, just pick the one you think looks best, and then we'll just deal with it. And so we got
Those
that.
look like
and-
$2.30 rocks.
Was there a $1.75 rock right next to it that looked awfully similar? Yes, but that was not for me to choose.
It wasn't the right shade of gray.
Yeah, they're there. They
Right?
look. They're out of. They're not quite even yet. And I'm 3 short. But they look pretty nice. Anyway, so if anyone knows if the cost of rocks have gone up, unless you're a Cado and you just refuse to purchase a rock made in the exact same size and shape, so you could stack them
Yeah.
neatly and nicely so they don't fall over. Cado instead
This is a
just out
solved.
here
This is a solved problem.
just
Nature
taking his
has done this for
taking
us.
his wheelbarrow out to the woods,
Yeah.
dumping, taking oddly sized rocks back to his place, and then spending a year shaving them down so they can also. God, this is so much cheaper and more efficient.
Now that is admirable thrift.
That would yes. See, you find even I have the line. It's like, look, I will purchase these rocks that have been cut for me. Although I don't know if we have a good solution for some of the unevenness, and so I don't even know how do you shave down a rock. I don't know what I'm going to do there.
I think actually what you do is you shave down the ground under the rock.
I know.
You
But
just
the
a
problem
little
is
bit of-
I can't do that to the tree root. So that's like
the rut.
And it's huge. Like this tree in our backyard is fucking enormous. Anyway, so this is the other thing we did. I'm sending the video now. Come on, Discord. So we have 2 bushes, and they're extremely big. They came at the house. They scratch you if you try to walk up the steps. So frequently people just don't go up our front steps unless they don't know better, because you have to essentially walk through a forest. Did you already click play?
I'm sorry, you didn't say not to. Yeah,
I have not clicked play yet.
Yeah.
I will wait for Patrick's call.
Thank you.
Like a professional, Cado.
But your response is good. That's the response I was looking for. So I don't know. I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to hire someone to take their bushes. They're huge, and you can't really shave them down because, as we discovered, if you try to shave them down to make them more manageable, you actually just take off all of the bush, and all you're left is just some sharp branches. I was like, fine, we got to get rid of these, put in something smaller. And I'd mentioned this absentmindedly to a neighbor of mine. I was like, hey, I'm probably gonna take these fucking bushes out. He's like, oh, I can help with that. And I was like, well, I mean, I can shave them down. I got a tool, like yada yada. He's like, no. I can help with that. And I was like, okay. And so if you click play, Ren, we can go ahead and click play.
One sec. Before I click play,
yes,
I just want to say that this video, the freeze frame that it begins on in the Discord preview is already painting a picture of 1,000 words. It is the pile of dirt on the ground. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is Suburbia in a nutshell. And then all right, so 3, 2, 1, and then we'll click play.
Got it.
So 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it's a bush.
Really good.
That's a bush.
That's a bush.
So to paint a picture, for obviously people who have not seen this video, a neighbor of mine has a Jeep, and he's got the tools to.
Bye.
No, hold on. You have to
Yes.
describe the way the video opens on a shot of what could barely be called a bush is really kind of a bundle of branches that is
Because I shaved that motherfucker down to the bones.
to
That
the
is
the bones of what used to be a bush. A small pink scooter off to the side for some reason.
Yep.
Very good world building here. And what looks like I'm not exactly sure if that is a one of those ratchet clamp straps, You know those
Yeah,
that you
that
can
is
tie
so.
it down
That
to the
that is
sounds
exactly
right.
what it is.
Yeah,
I'm looking
yeah.
at it. That is what it is.
Yeah. Kind of tied around it. Like, and that's the whole frame. The ratchet strap, the strap goes off the side and just like holds for like a split second before turning to reveal a fucking Hummer? Jeep? What?
Is that a
big
Bonko?
car.
I think it's an actual like Jeep.
It's a Jeep. Okay, that's a Jeep, yeah. Just revving over there off to the side, ready to pull it out of the ground. It's beautiful.
The set with the that one came out no trouble. Did like zero work.
Yeah. Popped right out.
Next one, I'll show some evidence here, which would show that this next one was harder.
Oh,
that is rubber from the tire of the Jeep that had been eroded because of the 14 times that we spent trying to get this next one out. That had such a deep root system that what we were doing was just like bouncing on shovels around it to just hope we hit some root. And then my neighbor also had a tool that like you can just kind of like jam it into the ground and it'll cut through dirt to try and sever that. My wife is like on a pogo stick basically, just like waiting to hear like if you've ever like tried to dig up a substantial plant or like some you hear like kind of like crackle and it's like like I've got something under there. This other video is processing. I have 14 videos on my phone of like, this is the one. And it's like, this was not the one. All right. If you want to click play. All right. 3.
Wait. Can I just note my favorite detail of the first Bush video?
Sure.
And it is Patrick yelling, "That's a bush." It is fucking incredible to me. It is hearing Patrick go, "That's a bush" is a gift.
That first bush wanted to escape. It was like, I no longer want to be part of this home anymore. This other one was not the case. So all right, so 3, 2, 1.
Oh my god.
Yeah. We had to keep digging like underneath it to even give it like a leverage point. Like basically the
shoutouts to
the
the
strap.
Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger gnomes.
Yeah, people are always taking pictures of that, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, can I take a picture of your front yard?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess it's fine. I realize they're cool looking."
Oh, big squeak! Oh.
And if you see, I mean, some of the roots on that motherfucker are
wow.
Yeah, those are incredible.
Yeah, so that one did not want to leave, or
That
just
is-
like once it saw its brother removed, said, "No thanks, I'd like to stay here, please." I think a bunch of that is because that one is next to a bunch of other plants and root systems that are all like intertwined, whereas the other one was just sort of on its own. But that's how I spent.
So you covered that up, and those little bits of root are still down there.
Most of it got out. I got to do some. I have to clean it up. Unfortunately, it's now raining today, which now I'm gonna have to wait until it. Well, I don't know. That might make it easier actually to clean some of it up instead of just digging up dry dirt. But yeah, I was on the side like drinking a beer, screaming as a Jeep ripped up bushes from my yard. So just completely normal stuff. Just some of the whitest stuff possible, but that's just my life sometimes.
That's pure dad right there. That is
Pure
pure,
pure
unadulterated
dad.
dad.
Put a slow motion, put that in slow motion, add some Budweiser, just pure dad.
The dad values are off the charts, if I'm being honest.
Today we're gonna do a Citizen Sleeper spoiler cast after the break. Is there anything anyone else played this weekend they want to shout out or talk about before we get over to sleeper cast time?
I just started V Rising. It's that survival vampire game.
Yes.
I picked that up over the weekend. It seems neat. I am not playing on like a public server because other people could be mean to me. I don't like that one bit. So I'm playing on my own private server. Which I will hopefully add friends to should they get the game. And I think that game is interesting. It has basic
like a castle building game that's also a vampire survival Diablo style thing, right?
Yes, it is like
getting
Valheim.
Mashup, correct?
It is a Valheim style survival game where you're like punching trees. You're not actually punching trees. You have axes, but you're chopping down trees. You're breaking copper. But also there is this actually pretty in-depth combat and skill system, which is done in a really cool way, I think. Basically, there are a bunch of people scattered throughout the world who have vampire blood in them. And even if they aren't vampires themselves, they have like special blood, right? And if you drink their blood, you then get to unlock their specific vampire skills. There's also a really neat buff system that comes from what type of blood you're drinking. So drinking beast blood comes with a certain amount of buffs. Drinking warrior blood comes with a certain amount of buffs. Drinking rogue blood comes with like a certain set of buffs.
So are we bottling these up like I'm going down to the wine cellar? And it's like, how am I feeling today? Like, I would like a little warrior blood.
No, that's the interesting part, is that you can only have one at a time. And also the amount of buffs you get is dependent on the quality of the blood. Like whether or not the blood is like gross or not. And so the stronger the blood, the more powerful the buffs you get. So like sometimes like I was playing recently and I was in a fight with this enemy and I was playing against an enemy who was way over leveled for me. But here's the thing. In her little like posse of guys that were with her, there was a dude with 65% quality warrior blood. And that unlocks 3 tiers of the warrior buff path. And I was like, okay, I have to spend the rest of this fight being careful I don't kill that guy, because if I suck his blood during this fight, she will kill me. Like the woman who was like way over leveled for me, she will kill me. So I have to focus on like trying to maneuver myself and fire my skill shots in such a way that I'm hitting everyone but this one dude who I'm trying to keep at 1 HP. So the second the fight is over, I can vampire him. And that was like,
is it the kind of thing that you could do mid-fight? If you, it takes it's an animation that has to cycle in order for it to...
It's about 7 seconds.
Activate. Okay.
And 7 seconds for enemies just to do whatever they want to. And I was fighting against a woman who was way over leveled for me. And so each of her arrows was taking out I would say 13% of my health bar was being taken out by every arrow. And I was already on half of my health at the beginning of the fight. And that was before all of the fighting that got me down, that got the dude who I wanted down to 1 HP. And so by the end of the fight, I was basically on 1 hit trying to dance around this enemy that I should not be fighting so I could get to her little fucking buddy who has the yummy, yummy blood. And then I got it. And those buffs were super useful.
Is it on a timer? Like, you get it for half an hour? Like, how did the buffs operate?
You actually get to keep them for a while. It's for as much blood as you took from the person. So I took 10 liters of blood from that guy. And so it will drain over time slowly, or you can heal yourself by using blood. So after a fight, you can go somewhere else and transfer all of the blood in your blood supply into hit points. But that means that you're draining blood faster, which means that you'll have to abandon that buff for another one sooner. I think it's actually pretty neat. The combat feels solid. It is like a top-down game where you swing a sword around. Feels fine. The dodge is really fun to use, I will say, because you basically turn into a vampire mist and leave a copy of yourself that enemies will attack, and then you go invisible. And so if you're fighting someone a large group of enemies, your dodge is basically okay, cool, I'm going to dodge, get around someone, and then pop back into existence and get a backstab. And
is it direct control, or is it like a Diablo click?
Direct control.
Okay.
And so that dodge also gives you a boosted attack that heals you. And so it's very, very, it's really satisfying to swing behind someone and do an attack that heals you and then be okay, cool, now the fight is on my terms again. It's a very dash in, dash out. You feel like a vampire fighting a group of people where you're just juggling 4 people simultaneously and scritch, 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 scritch. Truly Morbius-esque.
So
as someone who saw that movie.
There's more Morbin time happening here than in... I saw that movie too, and I don't remember any of it. And nothing to do with the drinks being consumed. It's because it's just a nothing of a film. I like rewatched a trailer and I was like, I was like, how do I not remember vast swaths of the 90 minutes I spent watching this movie? And I was like, I just don't.
Well, it's a tight 90. It's a tight 90.
It's a tight.
It's very
define the word tight.
How can something be extremely short and also feel disastrously long at the same time?
Oh no.
This is extreme. Like somehow manages to. Like Matt Smith is like an actor I quite like, and he's you know what he's swinging. He's like he understands
so hard.
He's trying to play to the camera in a way that Jared Leto is not. Jared Leto is in like a more serious film than Matthew Smith is, and at least Matthew Smith is there to. There's a reason, like one of the few things that has become like a genuine source of enjoyment from that film is him like dancing half naked in a room while like a rap song plays, and he does like vampire cosplay.
It's incredible. Matt Smith becomes a vampire Richard Spencer. It is fucking incredible to me, the speed with which Matt Smith becomes vampire Richard Spencer. He even has the Richard Spencer haircut, and then like within 3 seconds he is spouting neo-Nazi bullshit. It is incredible.
Oh, no.
How he gets the blood, not established. How he gets the serum that turns him into a vampire, not established, because someone says, no, I will not give you the serum, and then he just shows up later in the movie as a vampire, and you're like, I guess he got it somehow. Everything about the movie is discoherent in a way that is like astounding to me. Its pacing is what a weird fucking film.
And it should be clear, like it's not like a fun bad. It's just you just want to watch a bad movie. Like, and then Morbius is your. I mean, I'd read that film was shot when, or like scripted when Sony thought they were gonna like break up with Marvel over the Spider-Man stuff, and so it seems like this might be half a movie because literally they had to cut half of the movie out to make the plot work once they'd signed a new deal with Marvel, which maybe would explain some of the wild pacing and like leaps of plot logic. But it's a shitty movie anyway. Like, but it's just, I mean, they did that whole bit where they put it out. Fucking, I got Jared Leto to put out a tweet that said, where he's reading a script that says Morbius 2, it's Morbin time or whatever. Like, just, you know, when you have the actors leaning into the meme, that means you have
the meme is
completely
died. It's
the
gone.
meme is dead.
It's no longer Morbin time.
They put it on theaters again. It made $85,000. Like, it probably cost millions just to, I don't know what the process is, but I can't imagine it's free to just get it back into theaters. And I'm certain it costs more than $85K.
And that revived the meme. That is the funniest part to me, is that they have like, they thought that they understood, like, this is a real joyous moment of a major corporation thinking it understands the internet in any meaningful way.
So this is before your time, Ren, but so this template of a studio trying to ride internet culture, thinking it understands what it wants and that will translate to money, is like best personified by Snakes on a Plane. The Samuel Jackson film that famously like added the line, like the internet line of like, get these motherfucking snakes off my motherfucking plane. And it was like, well, we do that for the internet. In this bad movie, they're going to show up. You know what happened? Nobody showed up because it was just an internet joke that people were having goofs on. And that movie completely bombed.
Did some quick math. 80K over the 1,000 theaters that it apparently was is about $80 per theater.
I looked up like if what screenings were around me. I just wanted to see, like, because on the apps you can see the seating charts, right? So you can see where people have already purchased tickets. I was like, who is the guy? There was only like one showing semi nearby. It was like a 3 p.m. There was one guy sitting dead center. I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? Just you going to see Morbius by yourself? Is your buddy? And then was someone else going to show up? I was like, I feel bad for this person. Like, maybe I should buy a ticket next to them, and we both show up to the Morbius show.
Oh, the most cursed thing. Just like. Yes, I'm going to go see
up
this.
And asking, hey, where is H7? Oh, that's right. Looking around at this empty theater. Is that right here?
Right here.
Thank you.
This is
Sorry, my friend bought the ticket. I don't know. I don't know where my seat is.
This is
I
the
don't think they're
dark
showing.
inverse of the time that I went to the Batman in a completely full theater and connected with the dude reading Chainsaw Man in front of me. It's like
right,
this is the shadowy other side of the coin where you intentionally go to an empty theater with one man in it.
Oh,
What's the opposite of how my wife and I usually buy movie tickets, which is we wait until the last possible second so that we can get the seats that are like strategically away from people, especially if we were going during COVID. It's like, well, you know, if we can tuck ourselves away in the corner and as opposed to being surrounded by people, at least that stuff made was helpful. It's interesting that V Rising is like I feel like there's one of these like every 6 months, but there's a game where the developers go, "Oh shit, we sold a lot." Like they didn't like this game came out of nowhere, had zero like hype behind it, but then looked really polished as the type of game that has done really well the last couple of years, especially of like a survival game that will play well with streamers. Like that seems primed to blow up, and then all of a sudden this game over the course of like the last 2 weeks has sold like I think 1.5 million copies. And every interview with the developer I've read is just like, just like an exasperated and sort of like, I don't know, like, wow, that's nice.
It's still early access, isn't it?
It is, it's 0.5. It's at a 0.5 like release, 0.05 release, like state. So it's about halfway. They're like, we're probably gonna stay in early access for like a year or two, but like they're like, it's almost feature complete. We just want to add more content and like a couple more systems to it. But this is a video game that, from what I understand, you can dump 20 to 50 hours into, and without getting to the end of the content that they have currently available in early access. Which I think
when it's
most
of these games. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, how's the building?
The building's fine. It is. The building
feels like that's the kind of thing that gets built out in early
functional.
access, though, is when people go, "Hey, this is what I'd like to put in my sexy vampire castle." Okay, we'll go build that.
The building is extremely functional. That's the thing that I will say is that a lot of games really struggle. And a lot of these, like this style of building game really struggles with giving players the ability to create spaces that feel real, because it doesn't like having two objects too close to one another. Like you can't put something directly up against a wall, you know, like you would if you were building a room, because the game is like, oh, that's kind of close to the wall. What if it gets in the clipping mass? You have to instead have it like a few feet off. And a lot of this like style of building game in my experience. And this is doing a really good job of giving you very finite control. It is also really easy to build with the isometric perspective. This like 2.5 like view is extremely useful for like placing things exactly where you want them to, as opposed to a lot of these games which are first person builders and you're like trying to like finagle something and like, is this straight? Is this not straight? I don't know if it's aligned with the wall properly. It's I think relatively well put together.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see where that goes. I've seen people trying to graft like Steam Deck controls onto it. I know that they've said they're going to try and do proper controller support, which it doesn't have quite yet. But this seems like the kind of game that will. I don't know. I'm always curious that these games that take off this way, how much life they have, or like people are just so desperate. Kind of like how like streamers move on, like it becomes very popular for an X amount of time, and then it's like it's just filling the void because there's not much happening in video games right now. Like there are games to play, but it is like we've been the beginning of the year was sort of like front loaded with a bunch of really big stuff, and now it seems people are sort of desperate for something to play, and so I'm curious what like the sort of lifespan something like V Rising gets out of it. But also there's not much coming up either. Like the gaming calendar slate is pretty dire at the moment.
Okay, so looking at a 6-month calendar. Actually, let's go to the year calendar. Okay, so looking at Valheim. As of June 26th, 2021, this is before it like broke big, had 29,764 players, concurrents on Steam. That was the Monday of July 26th. Its peak was at August 30th, 2021, at 109,793 concurrent players. It then dropped and then sustained at around 50,000 concurrent players from September 2021 through through January of 2022, and then drops to around 30,000 players. So that is like another example of one of these games that has actually sustained itself pretty okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty high floor.
Yeah, exactly. 30,000 is a pretty high floor, and it has dropped once it had its big spike, and then it dropped to its pre-spike levels and didn't fall off completely. And I think that's the key, is that these games have to try and, the spike is great, but then after the spike, maintaining that like 30K that they originally had, that is like the sign of longevity to me. Even if they can't maintain the 50.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing this game, and then I've played, I don't know, like 5 or 6 hours of Diablo Immortal, which is like the new free-to-play Diablo game that launched on iOS and Android, but there is also a PC version, and it was interesting to read why they even made the PC version, which was because when they did the beta, or one of the betas, they've done a couple for this game over the past year or so, basically content creators and streamers especially were like, hey, it's a huge pain in the ass to capture and stream a mobile game. I mean, you can do it. Like, it's not hard, but like, it's so much easier if you could just give us like a PC client. And so they literally built the PC client mostly with like streaming and content creation in mind, because it was easier for those folks to use a native PC client than it was to, you know, connect a HDMI to your iPhone or iPad, or to, you know, they have some of those like mirroring services that I've goofed around with before, but none of that stuff is as ideal as just having a native application. But seems like a weird game to play on the PC because it's a very stripped down version of Diablo. Like, I don't think I would want to mess with that unless I was a content creator who was making that for, you know, for my audience. But yeah, so Diablo Immortal is I think it takes place after, I'm very vague on the Diablo timeline, but it doesn't play, it's not like moving the story forward. It's like, it's parallel with 1 and 2. And it's a weird game to talk about because I haven't hit the wall yet, and I know that the wall is really close. So this is a game that is a really excellent, well-designed, fun to play, works excellent on touchscreen version of Diablo. There's not a whole lot of difficulty involved, so it's a lot of just like, I'm going to walk forward and the dings are going to come at an increasingly satisfying rate, but without like any meaningful pushback from the game at all. I just, you know, you've got potions and they're on a cooldown and you should think about that. Well, maybe don't, like, because maybe we're never going to cause any meaningful damage that you're going to have to actually worry about that, which is sort of fine. Like it's all translated to a touch interface. You can connect a controller, and it's got native support for things like the backbone, where you can like put your phone into a controller shell, and it's got all that stuff there if you want to engage with it that way. But I've been playing it on an iPad, and on that screen, it looks really nice. You on the left side, you know, very traditionally, you know, use your left thumb to kind of guide the character, and on the right you have these, you know, big icons you can press to enact your powers, but they're all like very easily like accessible. The game is not particularly twitchy. It does a good job of like handling like directionality of the attacks, in which if you have an attack that isn't just forward or AoE, basically like as you press the attack, that initiates your ability to modify that direction, and you can just press it and it'll go forward. But you can also like basically be, as soon as you hold it down, you can sort of just like move your finger or your right thumb in order to adjust that. It all feels like really seamless and slick, and you can just tell you can see in the way that Blizzard games at their best are like, wow, like, yes, are there lots of other action RPGs, Diablo-inspired hack and slashes that have existed on these devices for 10 plus years? Yeah. But then what Blizzard has historically done really well is like come into a space that already exists. It's like, hey, we're gonna give this like the slickest coat of paint possible. And Diablo Immortal, which was not completely developed in-house, I think it was made in conjunction with NetEase, which is like they make a lot of free-to-play stuff. And I don't know how much their involvement was figuring out the monetization and how all that was going to work, or if it was on a design side. But regardless, like, it feels like a Blizzard game in which like, oh wow, this is so enjoyable and simple to control that even though the game is not pushing back on me at all, I was just having such a joy like, watching loot drop, attacking demons, and like exploring the space, that it didn't really matter to me. Like, even if I went through all of this and that's all I did, like, this would be a satisfying way to spend, 15 hours. And so I've done the first 2 worlds, and I'm about to go to the third world, which is a desert area. I just got there last night, and I was trying to get what I've been told is a wall that occurs between like levels 32 and 36, which is everything I'm describing up to this point, which is like, wow, look at this, like, really satisfying, like, leveling up, loot drops, a difficulty curve that, is manageable. Apparently there's just a point where then all of a sudden the game goes, well, time to turn into a free-to-play game, and like just pulls a big switch, in which you are no longer, like, if you were, the campaign becomes XP gated. In order to get meaningful upgrades, you're having to engage, like, navigating the free-to-play, like, gacha, like, loot stuff that is, like, just navigating the menus gives me a headache. And I haven't had to do any of that, because almost like the game is like, almost feels like ashamed about, like, what it's about to become.
Right.
Like, the game presents itself as, man, we probably could have made like a pretty cool Diablo game and just charged you $30 for it, right? Oh, we didn't do that. Like, we didn't do that, and we don't want to tell you. Like, we're so ashamed of, like, what's on the other side of this. And like, I think the best way to handle this is to make sure you have like a really good time and like really want to play more of this, and then go, oh no, we built a free to play game on top of this. There are, I don't know if I can pull up the video in time, but basically, like, one of the ways you get a bunch of meaningful upgrades for your character are you do these like challenge rifts, like I think they're called like elder rifts or something like that. And in order, you can just run them without, as many times as you want, without any sort of so like the way the layering works is you're kind of like you're buying items that are increasing what you can get out of it. To get the best stuff out of it, you need to buy or have, and I think most of the stuff is very difficult to accrue naturally, and most of this is going to happen because you purchase it, like these additional items that increase the rarity, increase the drops. And there was a video floating around this morning of somebody who put in 20, like, here's the difference between a free dungeon run and then a $20 dungeon run. And the difference was they got basically nothing from the free run. And, that, like, if you played a Diablo game, that, like, that very satisfying sound that when a weapon, like, shoots out of a chest, it goes like, whoo, like, kind of like it's a whipping sound, and then like clunks against the ground. Like, it's so fucking good because that like something cool might have emerged from that chest. Like 15 of those things come sputtering out, and it's just like you see like epic.
Oh my
God. There's all sorts of stuff, and it just seems, this is not uncommon for games of this type, that it's going to hide away a lot of its meaningful upgrades in the pay scale. And I don't even mind having to pay, if it was as simple as, this game has 2 battle passes, a free one and then a premium one. This is fairly common these days in a lot of mobile games, where you'll be getting things accruing through a regular pass, but then you pay for a premium one that gives you better drops, access to more things. And I was basically like having such a good time in the first couple hours of this, like I could see myself just whatever, I don't know what it was, let's say it's $10, like that's fine. Like, that's like a meaningful, if that gets me some cool shit, like I would be happy to pay for this game anyway. And so I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm almost of the mind that that maybe I should just drop it and move on, because like, why keep playing this game that I'm enjoying, knowing that this free to play wall is coming and is going to completely destroy my interest, and then it's going to just turn into a grind, and that's not really what I'm here for. And there's got other stuff from one of the developers, I guess ahead of this game's release, Blizzard was sort of like saying publicly, you're not going to be able to buy gear. Like, gear is not something that's going to be purchasable. You can increase your chances to get better gear, but you can't just outright buy better gear, trying to avoid the the store that they had in Diablo 3 when it
the real
launched.
world money store?
Yeah.
I forget what it is.
So, I mean, they have a real world money store in this, but the whole, like, their lesson from Diablo 3 was, well, you can't buy XP and you can't buy specific items. But then the caveat here is that you can buy legendary gems, like stuff that you're socketing, and the buffs and the perks and the upgrades you get out of that are frequently better than you will ever get out of an item itself. And so in essence, they are selling gear. They're just not calling it gear, and they're hiding behind that because that's one of the ways they want to, bring in, whales and other folks who are going to spend a ton of money on this game, because that's the way that you're going to meaningfully advance, or you can do so in leaps and bounds in a way that you're not going to do playing the game, trying to avoid the money part. So I don't know, just seeing how much enjoyment people have gotten out of a game like Genshin Impact, which also has all sorts of free to play hooks in it, but the refrain I've always heard from lots of people who don't have issues with free to play mechanics, it doesn't sort of get them into trouble financially if you can kind of work your way around that you can play shitloads of Genshin Impact and never interact with that. And it just does not seem like that Diablo Immortal was made with that in mind, and that makes me sad because I've really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've been thinking about throughout this conversation is the ways in which Genshin Impact was actually the example I was going to use. Good free-to-play game design with microtransactions, right, I think has to understand that paying can solve problems in the game, right, in terms of getting pulls in Genshin or something like that, right? But you also have to give players enough tools to be able to make interesting strategies that get around that system. So for example, in Genshin Impact, right, you literally might not get the character you're trying to pull, and that's a bummer. But you still have the tools to build a viable build set around the characters that you do pull. And that viability and the ability to adapt around the free-to-play system is, I think, the key. And what you're describing is a system that does not allow you to adapt around it. Because the top tier gems that you really need are in that legendary system or not legendary, in that shop. And you don't have the ability to build a cool build around it that is even off meta, right? People do off meta builds in Genshin all of the time with the characters that they have, as opposed to trying to pull the S tier character that they need.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Is there isn't really a character that you need, only ever a character that you want, right? Because you think they look cool or understand that a certain part of their set would go really well with some of the other characters you've pulled, and it's...
And also, isn't it kind of the case in Genshin that how does it gate the story, right? Because that's the thing that for me, I don't care if I'll never be in the 1% of high grade. I know that's a lot what do in Diablo. One of the hooks of Diablo is that when you play the normal campaign, that's just understanding the arc of the content in front of you, and that a lot of the enjoyment is then going back on increasingly harder difficulties as you are getting better and better loot that increases your DPS output. And so I understand that's how a lot of people enjoy Diablo over the stretch of hundreds of hours. It's why Diablo 3 can have things like seasons, because that's how it's structured. I'm just here to hack and slash until I kill the big demon, right, and it dies. But I can't even do that part without engaging in a bunch of the free to play stuff. And that's the thing that really puts me off. And my impression has always been with Genshin that maybe if some of that stuff might exist, but it's not front and center, constantly reminding you hey, get out your wallet if you want to see the next story beat.
No, the thing that you buy is primo gems, which are used to pull more characters, and or there's a weapon bucket too. But the story, you can just play through it. I'm trying to remember if there's anything, I don't remember hitting any roadblocks as far as campaign content goes that would have had me pay into it at all. It's all just do the next quest on the main story quest and you'll be fine. There
I think
isn't even any XP hurdles really, and as far as I can remember, primo gems are just... Well, here's the thing. So you said, and maybe we should be clear about this too, you said you don't have to engage with the gacha system in Genshin to continue playing it, which isn't exactly true, because the way you get characters in the game is through the gacha system, right, but you get free currency. So you can play the game without putting money into it.
I guess, it's the upfront monetization stuff, right, where it's shoving that down your throat seems less in a game like that. At least that's my impression from people that really like it.
It's this is the system with which to get characters when they appear on the little banner, and you get that currency by doing missions in the game. Like there's dailies that you can do to slowly accrue that currency. But also, if you want a few more pulls because that character is limited time, you can just put some money into the Primogem bank, and then you get a lot of Primogems to get more pulls. Is the real thing. They show it to you like it is. Characters are front and center in the game itself, right? Like you're always meeting new characters, and then once you've like done their story bits, you might see them pop up as like, oh, this is the featured character for the next 2 weeks. You're like, shit, I really liked that character because I've met them already. Like they're trying to get you invested in them as people, so that when they pop, you're like, oh shit, yeah, I want to spend some money to get the extra pulls to actually make sure I pull them specifically.
Well, and I think something specific to Diablo Immortal is that, like, they already made a good Diablo game. I mean, Diablo 3 had its problems, but like they came out the other side of that, making a game that people quite like. And Diablo 1 and 2, like, they made a Diablo game, but like, and they made another one of these here. It's like you already had a model, like, that worked pretty well. Like, the loot is random, and you've got to go through a lot of bullshit to get the stuff you want, but it didn't require, it didn't feel as exploitative. Like, in some level, like, loot stuff is exploitative in and of itself, because you're just asking people to run things over and over, hoping that the math runs in their favor. But as long as the, like, moment-to-moment mechanic, like, that's the deal. It's like, well, the moment-to-moment mechanics are going to feel good, and, like, that's going to be the motivating factor to want to come back and do this over and over again.
Right.
And it's like, they already did that in Diablo, but then, like, if Blizzard might have been better off, maybe there'd be less. It's hard for me to say because I don't really engage with these games to begin with, so it's difficult for me as an outsider to, like, well, I kind of think this is all shitty, but like, I don't, on the layers of like good shitty and bad shitty, like, where does a game like Diablo Immortal fall? Everything I'm reading is like, it's a bad one, that this is like really like a poor implementation, like really exploitative, really like destroys a lot of the momentum the game has. And maybe they would have been better served having a different IP, but you're using Diablo because it's a name brand. People are going to click on it because they see Diablo, but then you're also going to run into the issue where you have the core Diablo audience, and maybe they just ultimately don't care that, like, the mass audience is actually what matters here, and not the, like, much smaller core Diablo audience. But those people are going to be the ones that immediately go, yeah, you already solved this problem. Like, you just made a new problem because you wanted more money. And, like, that doesn't feel good if you're a Diablo fan. Also knowing that Diablo 4 is, you know, that game was really impacted by a lot of the culture shit that Activision Blizzard has gone through in the last year and a half, and they've lost a lot of senior leadership. And so my guess is that game is not coming out for, you know, another 18 months. And so if you're a Diablo fan who hasn't played anything meaningfully new in some years, it's like you're left with this flawed, compromised version of Diablo that plays really slickly, but also feels like it's trying to hustle you the entire time.
Have you heard of V Rising?
Right. Yeah, there you go. It's not on mobile though. Not on mobile though. Key to that. I'm sure it will be eventually. Anyway, so I'm gonna try and hit that wall. I can report back when I do. But let's take a break. We're gonna come back. We're gonna spoil some Citizen Sleeper, a game that, well, I guess, Cado, you did finish it?
Yes.
I assume you did? Okay,
I did,
all right. All right, you finished it this weekend. All right, we'll be back. We've got some of your questions. We'll talk about our endings. So if you have not played Citizen Sleeper from the jump, we're just going to spoil it. So if that is where you get off this train, thanks for listening. Everyone else, stick around after the break, and we'll be back to spoil that game. And we're back. Well, I'm not back. I am now part of the ship. I have become intertwined.
Oh my
in
god!
Its inner consciousness.
Oh my god! Holy shit!
Are you fucking kidding me?
Oh my god!
I'm fused. I'm at the plant people.
You joined the
said,
river.
I am now one of you. Let's go.
Wow.
Wow. Rejecting that ending is probably some of my favorite lines of dialogue in the entire game. We should get there. I have like a really complicated feelings on how I arrived at that ending and why I arrived at that ending. And then we had a lot of questions related. I think that was, as you just alluded to, Ren, like that. I think that entire sequence, if you got to it, was
cause a lot of anxiety for people as they try to work through it. But yeah, Citizen Sleeper, part of 2022's, banger year of narrative games.
The Renata
Never been long
Prize.
in my fucking life.
The Renata Prize
Well,
2022 Narrative Banger of the Year award.
Yeah, we haven't done I don't think we haven't done awards in well, we didn't do them last year. I think we did them the year before. But if we do them this year, that will the Renata Prize 2022 Year of the Narrative Banger Award goes to insert.
Yeah.
Well, currently we have Norco, we have Citizen Sleeper, and then I guess Shipbreaker has probably also been added. No, maybe not. Yeah, I heard the narrative was kind of
I like that game's narrative is extremely well deployed through its gameplay systems. I think its writing, it leaves a little bit to be desired, and it's like narrative design.
Well, let's start with Cado, you just finished the game, so you're the most recent one to have seen an ending. Where I don't know, like where did you leave off, and then I guess walk us through how things ended up with you.
It's interesting. I have some structural issues with what happens at the end of the game, but I see how they ended up with the way that they do it. I really enjoyed the game, and I think
the economy kind of breaks in the second half.
I think that's on purpose. That feels purposeful to me. Here's the thing. So
I think it depends on when you hit it, right? Like it was very satisfying when I hit it. We've gotten some questions from, let me find this one. So this comes from Aaron. As someone who was min-max pilled at a very young age, which is a very funny phrase, I found the systems and mechanics of Citizen Sleeper extremely solvable. I still had a fantastic time with the game, but experienced very little friction before I was able to set myself up to basically never worry about cryo, condition, energy, or time. For a game that hits so strongly on themes of deterioration and poverty, do you think Citizen Sleeper would have been better served with harsher game balance or maybe some difficulty options? Thanks, and keep up all the great work that you do.
So I don't think so, because part of the way that you min-max those systems is by creating community, right? Mm-hmm. It's by helping other people out so that they can help you in return. And like the only way that you could get to a point where you're like stable and like living life in like a just kind of like maintaining yourself way is through like helping other people, right? And like then they'll help you back. And I think that is very purposeful. It's like what the game is trying to say about ways that we can survive is by taking to communities and helping each other out as like what's the word I'm looking for? A counter. No, like as an antithesis to the way that capitalism pushes a like individualistic narrative, right? Like the game starts out, you are like kind of scrambling to get by, and like it makes that point very, very well. Like there's a lot of stress, even though if you juggle things just the right way, you end up never being in any quote unquote real danger, I guess, of like, I never got very low, but the stress was always there. And like, I ended up pooling funds.
And you didn't want to find out, right? Like,
right, exactly.
This is why I ended up writing a piece after talking to the game's, writer designer was, the game doesn't, so many video games communicate what their end state is, or if they have an end state and how the end state operates,
right?
Like, as a matter of like their tutorial or like they expect the player to encounter it. And what I thought generated some of the most stress from Citizen Sleeper was, I don't want to fucking find out. Like,
no.
It doesn't make, I was like, this game has no saved games. It's auto saving constantly, so you can't save scum it. And that gave me the impression that, okay, you probably can't actually die or hit a fail state. There are probably, conditions that will there'll be some sort of punishment, but you'll just keep going forward no matter what. And then, in talking to the designer, like they said, one of their like design ethoses was like, accepting failure as canon, which then makes a lot of the game and its systems make a ton of sense.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest ways that you can see the like TTRPG roots of this thing is the idea of fail forward, because like when you fail a role in like a role-playing game, as a GM, you don't want to ever make that be an end unless it feels narratively correct to make it an end. So like that sort of sense of like, okay, even if you fail, it's more that you've changed the narrative stakes, you've changed like the framing around what is happening to your character.
Yeah, I would also say that, like, for me, Citizen Sleeper is, at its core, a game about both queerness and also chronic illness. And, like, it approaches both topics with a incredible degree of hope. And is, like, deeply, deeply hopeful for people living with chronic illness under capitalism in particular. And, like, for me, hard fail states or even more pressure, while I think resonant, would have undercut the game's belief that, like, things can be better and that, like, people through systems and through community can make each other's lives better and more viable. And I would hate to see that hope kind of fade away, because there's tons of games about, like, being crushed by poverty, right?
I just wonder, like,
significant number.
It was like maybe 3/4 through my playthrough that I realized I'm like just like drowning in skill points. And I was like, all right, I really wish I'd invested in that currency one that like gave everything a discount a lot earlier, because that was part of a moment in which, you know, I'd done enough of the mission where like you go all the way to the top of the ship and you're helping out those folks that are I forget the character names, but you're helping them out, like repair a bunch of things. And like the payoff for that one,
Moritz.
Yes. And the payoff for that one, like, basically, like, I hit the currency thing where, like, everything became 20% cheaper. I did their mission, which gave me, like, $500 or whatever. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh. And then it also became very easy for me to get my medicine. It's like, at that moment, I was like, oh, I did it. Like, I climbed the mountain. But it also happened at a point that felt very narratively, like, correct. It was like, my player has put in the investment that I have earned the right to no longer stress about those things. And now I will spend my time investing in the community around me as I wrap my head around the ending. But I think and this did come up a couple of times, I think some people hit that earlier than felt earned by, like, it seemed clear to them that, like, they were supposed to, like, narratively, it seems like maybe you're supposed to suffer a little longer before you got to that point. And I can imagine a world in which if you play this game for 8 hours, if somehow you broke that curve in the first 2, that it would make some of the stuff that comes after feel less satisfying. But it was also an answer I got from the developers. When you're designing rules and balance for 100,000 people, like, some people are going to slip through the cracks and it's not going to fully work for them. And I think this works for most people. And that if you identify those min-max points early and then are able to exploit them, I think that's just sort of the nature of, how this stuff works. That said, I wouldn't be shocked if, this game got an update later that was like, hey, do you want this to be a little harder early on? But I also think those systems are just kind of there for it's not that big of a deal. But that was just my experience with it.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was, if this is on this current topic, then please go.
Yeah, like, I think that, hold on, loading. The curve, the thing about the curve is that you have to put things into it in a way where I can see how, and like this happened a few times where depending on the order of operations for certain quests, some of the narrative moments felt a little like, oh, okay, like I can see how if I had done that a little earlier, it might have hit harder. But now it's like, oh, I did this one later than maybe I should have, or I put this one off a little later. And like, I think there's still some interesting moments where like, oh, I could see how if I did this earlier, I would have read differently. But for the most part, all of those systems require a certain amount of your attention or like effort to unlock, right? Like you have to go back and like fill those clocks. You have to like spend time doing that, and maybe to a certain degree going back to the same place 3 cycles in a row and just dumping all of your good stuff into one can feel a little less narratively weighty than what is actually happening, right? When you do those things, it's like, oh, I'm going to work at the bar, right? I'm going to go spend time at this place. And like the time for us is like 3 seconds. You put in the dice and then you click the button to make the dice go. But like as a role-playing game, I like imagine it as like, no, my character's gonna go do this act for some extended period of time. And when like in that frame of mind, even if all I did was spend like 2 or 3 cycles like unlocking this thing that then let me like make a lot of money faster or easier, for the character it's like, oh, you've spent time in this place and met more people and like become a more integral part of the community, which has allowed this access to this other bit. And so even though like I don't think I ever had to stress about money after like, I think Ethan was the last thing that like made me stress about money, was when I was like supposed to be paying his debt or whatever at the bar.
Never did. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. No, me same. I was actually kind of curious what would happen if that timer ticked down, but I actually hit this is one of the ones where I think it felt a little off. I hit the end of Feng's quest where you remove the tracker before the end of Ethan's quest came up. To like be clear, basically Ethan's quest, Ethan is a bounty hunter you are his bounty. And at a certain point in his quest, he loses the bounty on you, and a new bounty hunter is said to be on the way, and a big clock fills up. But if you remove the tracker before that clock fills up, like you don't get to see what happens. But I know I like looked it up. It's like apparently there is a section where, Ethan's story kind of plays out more dramatically, I guess, than just being like, okay, I dumped my tracker, therefore no one can follow me anymore. Did either of you see that end?
Randy, you had some points you wanted to make.
Yes, I did. I did see that end. The thing I've been curious about this whole time is, because I think it's useful to set the stage for our audience in terms of like what each of us saw, is if we could just go through because Cado, you've touched on this, just tell the story of your sleeper real quick. Like what is the order in which you did kind of conclude plot threads or move plot threads along? Because I think that will be helpful.
Do you want to start?
I can start.
Yeah.
I started with Ankita, and this is the thing that like shaped my entire story. Ankita is a mercenary who has a ship. And basically she was betrayed by one of her comrades, and then, you then spend the rest of the time helping her rebuild her ship. At the end of her narrative, she goes to the part of the ship where the person who betrayed her is. And she goes there to kill them. And she has you find them first. You go there to find them. She goes there to kill them. When you find them, you realize that Ankita has basically Ankita's like crew member fell in love with the ship's AI and is putting that AI in the body of a sleeper, in like a sleeper frame, so they can be a person and be a person with that crew member, and the two of them can have a life together. That is the end goal of Ankita's storyline. When I showed up there, I had a pretty good relationship with Ankita in the game. I was like, I'm friends with this woman. I trust her. Yes, she is rough around the edges. Yes, she is a mercenary. I think that I can let her handle this situation and that she will make the right decision here. And she goes to them, and then she kills both of them in front of you. And the moment after that, so it was this moment where I was like, oh, I can trust this person. There's this relationship that I've built up over time in the game. No, we couldn't. Sometimes people just do bad shit. Sometimes even people you care about do bad shit. And she did. And the shame and guilt of that crushes her immediately. Like she does it, and then she turns and looks at your face after she shot a sleeper in the head and basically realizes what she did and immediately runs away. Because she cannot handle actively engaging emotionally with a problem, which is why when her crew member goes away, she dedicates herself to rebuilding her ship. It's why she shoots them in the head, and it's why when she's finally asked to be accountable, she runs away. And that was the turning point for my sleeper. That was the first story arc I finished. And so it was this moment where this character who I had, built up in my head as very trusting and as like deeply engaged with other people has that crushed in front of them. And instead has to live with the weight of having not stopped someone they cared about from killing 2 people. And so the rest of the game I played with that weight in mind. I had her really, really focus on building up senses like places of community and also intervening in bad situations and making decisions as opposed to standing by the sidelines. Finishing Ankita first totally changed the way I like went through that game. I also did see the end of the what's his name? The guy who comes to kill you.
Ethan.
Ethan. The end of Ethan's questline has Ethan die. Because basically the dude shows up to kill you after you have paid Ethan's debt and brought him over to your side. And he shoots and kills Ethan. He also shoots you, the sleeper, but you're able to, in my case, I was able to get a gun and then kill him as well. And so Ethan died in my character's arms, again, as this major turning point. And so that was like the major arcs of my character's life, and then everything else kind of flows from there with the going to the river and rejecting it, setting up the like local crime syndicate as the like de facto community governance body of the low end, and also finally when you work on Ankita's ship at the end, it was like that was the last thing I did in my playthrough was finish working on repairing Ankita's ship with the shipyard before she flew away. And it was like the game hit in every way it needed to, and every narrative part it needed to for it to like really come together for me.
For me, oh, go ahead.
So, quick question: when did you hit Lemon Mina's ending?
Actually, Lemon Mina was my last one. Sorry, I misremembered. It was the end of the shipbuilding arc, and then the end of Lemon Mina.
Interesting.
Yes, who I mentioned my character actually being willing to make capital D decisions. At the end of the game, I didn't take the ship, and
do you know that you can fuck them over?
You can fuck Lemon Mina over?
Yeah, you can like. I forget how it works out, but you can basically be incredibly cruel to them. Yeah. You can create a bad ending for them. I forget how it plays out. I was reading about it and I was looking up the endings.
Yeah.
Well, it really depends on what you consider. The Lemon Mina thing is the choice there is very interesting, I think. But let's get your path, Patrick.
Yeah. So for me, basically, the game clarified for me once I met Fang, and I was like, yeah, fucking, let's create a revolution. Fuck these people. Because like the arc of his is basically like he promises to rip out your tracker if you help him find some information about what's going on and about like what is it like that there's a character who like during a previous revolution essentially like hid themselves amongst the populace and was responsible for a bunch of terrible things happening, and now is like this celebrated member of the community that is getting rich again off of the backs of everyone. And like Fang is like, I can figure this out. I can find evidence and we can bounce them and we can change this place. And that seemed to go hand in hand with, I also need these bounty hunters to stop, to get off my back. So it's like, I'm just all in on Fang. I was like, that's going to be, I'm doing these other things around it, but that became the thrust of what I was following. I was always checking in on Fang. I was always advancing that whenever I had an opportunity. That's where all my resources would go. And I was actually sort of disappointed. Like there's not a Fang ending. And I was like, you finish the quest line and it's really long, to the point that it seemed like, oh, this is going to be a primary thread that ends with a credit roll. And it doesn't. You accomplish his task, you manage to expose some corruption on the ship that can hopefully lead to change. And then he takes out your tracker, and then the game just keeps going. And I found myself at like a real loss because I'd sort of already invested as this being the arc of the character. This is where it'll end up. Me and Feng, buddies to the end. And then Feng's like, peace. I helped. I'm like gonna go do my shit. And so then I spent more time kind of like bouncing around. That's this part of the game where like the economy arc got broken for me, and I could kind of poke and prod in various places. I could try and as much as I, checked in on that cat, like that didn't seem to amount to anything. And I'm curious if there's anything that you check in on that.
You feed a cat.
You feed the cat.
No, but like
you feed and pet the cat.
You feed and pet the cat.
Anything?
You have a cat.
And then so I'm kind of floating between all these different missions, like trying to figure out like, okay, like it really kind of took the winds out of the sails for me in terms of like, I was like, I really invested in this being how things played out. And then I did the the nerve mind, like you're helping out the machine. This is what opens up on the back half of the ship. Sort of like this organism that exists in parallel with the ship that offers you an opportunity if you go down this mission, like, hey, you can just leave that body behind. You can become part of us, like this more collective. And for me, the what happens is, and this is where the game's like mechanics really pressed me, is like when you're presented with this option to like break the thread or to head back to your body, like there's no way to see how both sides work out. It's just, you're presented this option. You're not going to be able to come back to this. This isn't a situation where like, hey, you've unlocked an ending. You can come back and like figure it out. And it's like, no, you got to make a choice here. And I had so many other missions I had not like finished out. And I was presented with this sort of like choice of finality or like a completionist. Like I can go see more things and how they end out, or I can take this option. And for me, the way I viewed my character was, I mean, they never chose this life. They never chose this body. It was thrust upon them. They were essentially, which is not dissimilar to all of us. We don't choose this life. We don't choose these bodies. That is sort of just the world we are born into. But all of these difficulties they were dealing with, even though I'd broken the economy, they were still stuck with this self that, I don't know, it didn't feel natural to them. And they were offered this opportunity to have something else. And they were the ones making the choice. They were given the choice to reject this, have their own new sense of self that was of their own autonomy. And that felt appropriate to the character. It was not how I would, like, Patrick, like, I want to go see the other things. But for this character and where they're at, this felt very right for them. So I chose to become part of the collective, leave seeing Len and Mina and all like the other missions play out. I'd done my best to help people, but I didn't feel like, as Rob put it, I'm not the mayor of this ship. It is not my responsibility to fix everything before I make a choice for myself. And so I made the choice to become part of that, and credits rolled, and that felt very satisfying, even though I was left with a lot of dangling threads, from a mission perspective, but I didn't feel like I'd missed anything. I felt like I had come to a pretty natural conclusion for the character.
Patrick, you're hitting on something I think is really interesting about the game, and that is, one, the deep understanding and respect it has for almost all of its endings, right? Mm-hmm. Any choice or path you go down, the game is very clear, like, it's okay to do this. Like, this is with the exception of apparently the bad end with Lemon Mina, which I think is unfathomable. You fucking monsters.
Wait.
What is the bad end?
What is the bad end?
I thought you knew the bad end.
I'll look it up.
Is it a bad end? This is my question. Because the implication,
what is the fuck them over ending?
Well,
I'm trying to look it up.
This depends on this definitely feels like this depends on your perspective of what that ship is doing. But the fuck them over end is you destroy the tickets, right? Like you leave them here.
Yeah,
yes, I think that's what it is.
You then also don't go.
Yeah.
That's not fucking okay. We have very different. Okay, I did not read that as fucking them over.
And me either. This is what I'm saying.
Because
let me look it up, because there was a walkthrough that was like, well, I guess you could do this, but this seems sort of cruel. But let me continue on your point. I'll try and get some clarity on this.
Right. So the point I have about the game's endings that I find really fascinating is, one, the game is actively interested in giving you the space to make these decisions about this character. Great, cool. But there is also a degree to which the content in games as like a medium, right? The path that gives you more capital C content is structurally incentivized, right? this is like kind of the complexity of having the most interesting story be the evil one, right? The quality and amount of content is directly equated to what the game's systems are incentivizing. And I think it's really interesting that for Citizen Sleeper, the endings that keep you with that community and that keep you integrated into the relationships that you've built with people are the content incentivized endings, right? Staying and being a part of this place is what the game directly incentivizes through this system. And like kind of ties into its fundamental thesis about how we interact with one another. I think it's very well done. And a really good way to center community values as its like primary thesis, while also not punishing players for making the choice to kind of take control or autonomy over their own bodies and their own relationships to this place.
And you find out after you do an ending that you can go, it will dump you back into the game, and then you can go explore other stuff, which I decided not to go back and do. I kind of just said, no, that was it. I appreciate a game. I'm glad that you have given me the opportunity to experience a sense of like finality and closure. But hey, if you want to go see what other stuff you could have done, like go right at it. And I was like, like the moment passed. I was like, I'm good. Like I don't feel like I need to go do that, which is I think a real testament to the game's storytelling, because so frequently you want to feel like you've checked all those boxes, seen all of the content before you kind of close the book on it. And like I thought it was really cool that I finished that and went like, I'm good. I wanted to see more of Lem and Mina, but I guess I won't.
So you
That's
didn't see Lem and Mina or the end of Bliss and Ankita, right? Then
no, I didn't see any other. I saw one ending, and that was
just
the one done.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
Cado,
wild.
what was your path? It sounds like you also saw multiple endings.
Yes.
I'm really curious as to your movement through the game.
So from very early on, my big like focus, which was very funny because you end up not doing barely anything with him, is Emphis. And everything, I kept an eye out for the fucking, food stall guy. I fucking love that guy. And I kept an eye out for like fucking, where are these fucking mushrooms? It took so fucking long to get to finally get to the fucking mushrooms.
I was sort of disappointed there wasn't like a huge payoff for that, except, I mean, I get that these cool chats.
Yeah, I think the story is really
good.
Really
but I spent so much time trying to, that became one of my...
mushrooms? Where the fuck are these mushrooms?
It was like, just finding some help with like a ripper, got it, on it. First thing I'm going to do. Also, anytime it seems something leads me to new mushrooms, I'm on it. Let's go. Let's get these mushrooms.
Let's fucking go. But yeah, I had a very a kind of similar end arc to Ren, where the first of like what I realized was going to be the end game was the end of Ankita's quest. I misread the thing that I think maybe there was a dialogue or something that I might have misunderstood, but I thought it was the sleeper going the other way. When you were saying they were trying to put the ship mine into a sleeper, I straight up thought they were trying to put the sleeper into the ship mine, like a Neo-Vent situation.
No, it was a transfer because the crew member while on the ship fell in love with the ship mind. And they developed a relationship with one another.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I read it the other way, was because Ankita said he left for a while and then came back changed. So I thought he met a sleeper on the Eye who was dying.
Let me check the order of operations here.
Because in my mind, what had happened was they land on the Eye, he leaves, and then Ankita says, and then he comes back changed. And at that point is when he steals the ship mine, and to me it was he met that sleeper and fell in love with the sleeper that had arrived around or just before you. But that sleeper didn't end up in a good place. And the only way to save them, or the way that Ashton thought they could save them, was to upload them into the ship mine. Like the ship mine could hold their consciousness where they couldn't be held anywhere else if their body was failing. Right? That story was like a sleeper reaching the end of their like planned obsolescence, not getting the help from the community that we got. Like it's directly kind of like lined up with your character in a way. And like you basically get to see what a bad end would have been for you if you hadn't found community, right? That's how I read that whole section. Was that Ankita essentially becomes the final villain on a run of you never connecting with the community. But either way, that happens, and then like 2 cycles later, I get to the green space while I have Lemon Mina like 90% of the way done, right? And at that point, it was like, I see the argument for taking this at this point, but I want to finish helping my friends, so I'm not going to take it. And that felt like really emotionally resonant. And then I start in like trying to like get around that. I start the bliss thing pretty late. So like I'm worried actually that I'm going to get on this ship with Lemon Mina before I finish bliss.
Well, the bliss one requires a ton of attention to see.
Yeah.
Through.
And I got it like it was basically
when I finally got the reroll mechanic, which I got pretty late into the game. It was like, boy, wow, this is really saving my ass to try and move this along to hit their deadlines.
The thing that I ended up having happen was basically at the end of Lemon Mina, there's a countdown to when the ship actually leaves, to when you have to actually board. And the bliss was 1 cycle. The bliss one where there was going to be one last job was 1 cycle behind that. So again, I get up to that moment of like, should I go? And the thing that's keeping me back, like Ren mentioned, is kind of technically more content, but narratively it's, I have unfinished business and I feel like helping these people that have helped me in certain ways, like, or like helping people in this place is the only reason I've survived. Right. And like, so I want to pay it forward. So I let them go.
I guess like some of this is like, how much do you feel a connection to the eye and the people there? Or was this just a way station, where you do the good that you can on your way to, whatever's next? And like, it seems like that's the difference between like my playthrough and both of yours is I just consider like, well, I'm here and I'm here for as long as I need to be here, and not in a like selfish sort of way, but just sort of a, I didn't feel the need to sort of, I didn't feel like my community. It was more just like, I was here. I tried to do the good I could while I was here. Definitely, and now I'm on to the next thing.
I definitely felt like that almost up to the end. It's like, I have to help one last person, but then there'll be another way off the ship. I have to help one last person, and then there'll be another way off the ship. And then I get to the last way off the ship, which for me, Bliss and Ankita, that came last. And that's when I realized, oh, Ankita's running. Ankita can't find community here. She's fucked up bad. And I'm like, but I have people I still care about at this point. So that's why I end up making the decision. I need to go back and feed this cat every single day. As soon as I unlocked the extra apartment and could feed the cat, I fed that cat 3 cryo every single day.
It turns out actually kind of what we're discovering is that had they not included this cat feeding option, you might have left this ship.
Oh my god!
The cat feeding option
I had to
grounded
keep feeding
you
the
to
cat. But no, yeah, it just worked. It ended up there are a couple other times where narrative things happen where, for example, when I hit the end of the Fang quest line and my tracker gets taken off, you go to the compressor bar where he's been hanging out where you're supposed to be paying his debt. And you have a moment that is kind of vague enough that technically it works narratively, but very obviously is meant to happen before Ethan loses the contract on you. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I see what they're doing, and like it still technically works with where I am at, which where I left that was between Ethan losing the contract on you and the next person showing up. The next person hadn't shown up for me when I finished Fang. However, the way that these 3 endings played out for me felt so like I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like I couldn't have imagined another, like I had to like walk up to the threshold and reject it 3 times to really realize oh, this is just where I live. Like, this is my community now. And like really walk up to the threshold, because I thought I was gonna leave with Lemon Mina until like the last fucking second. Like, you know, I was in the gangplank on the gangway or whatever, like seeing them get on before I made the decision to back out.
I think my question kind of is that I think I came to the decision to stay a lot earlier, and I'm curious, when did you finish the still?
Early. It was maybe like it was before I finished Ankita's stuff. Like I've
That's
definitely
what you're building
finished
out of the bar, right?
Yeah. You're
Yeah. See,
building
I
the
unlocked
still.
that so late that that would have been one that I would have gone. I would have had to go back to and clean up. But
for
So
me,
the still-
something about that felt like I've helped Tala get up and running, but she doesn't necessarily need my help anymore. And like I love to go back there and I love to work shifts and like cook mushrooms and hang out. But like that felt conclusive enough to me that I was like, okay, if I leave, she's set up, right? Like I'm not leaving someone in a lurch, essentially.
Right, and I would agree. I also finished it relatively early, but I finished it after Ankita. I think for me, watching Ankita kill those two people changes my character's relationship with that place.
Right.
Fundamentally. Because from that point forward, she is always trying to be engaged and present and not stand by in situations.
Right.
And not like trust.
Is that what you chose during that? Did you stay quiet during the Ankita situation?
Yes, because I thought she wouldn't pull the trigger.
Oh no,
I thought she was my friend, and I thought she wouldn't pull the trigger.
No, I the second that she showed up and got aggro, like I picked every single dialogue option that was like, no, stop! Like, what is happening? And in some ways, almost kind of cursed myself for not seeing this being the end. Like, it was definitely a very like my sleeper should have seen this coming. And kind of kicks themselves for not having seen it coming.
Right. Same. So did Ankita kill them for you?
Yeah. I don't know that there's any other ending, even though there is. I had to alt F4 the game halfway through that scene because I had to restart my computer. And I came back and like I realized there was the option to not call Ankita. I'm really curious what happens there. But I did the same thing. I did the thing that I was gonna do as I was halfway through the thing, which was call her in like we had agreed, and watched it all play out.
Yeah, that it went the same for me.
Yeah.
I think that also I did a lot of the after Ankita's arc. I mostly focused on the doctor's arc because I finished Fangs pretty early. I did the doctor's arc. And then I did the collective consciousness arc with the one that joins the first AI you meet.
Did you have the commune unlocked before Ankita, or did you do Ankita first and then get the commune?
I did Ankita up until the point where you need the commune.
Right.
And then I unlocked that area. And that was the first thing I did in that area.
Right.
The first thing I did in the commune area was watch Ankita kill two people.
Oh my god.
Also, I didn't build an apartment until the end of the game. Until after I'd finished all of the endings. Because my character didn't need to. She was sleeping on couches of like friends and people who she like cared about and like relationships that had developed
the cat
over the
didn't
course
get
of the
cared
game.
for in your run is what you're saying.
Here's the thing. A small thing that I did was after I did all of the endings, I thought to myself,
just cycled through 300. I'm gonna just take care of this cat and make up for lost time.
Legitimately, yeah. Not like specifically to take care of the cat, but because I was like, this has been a lot, and my sleeper hasn't had time to rest yet.
The sleeper needs to sleep.
After the end of the game, after all the credits roll, after I've seen all of the credits, I went back to the apartment and I looked at my stash of money and I was like, I'm just going to give the sleeper like a week's worth of cycles where all she has to do is go cook some food at the bar, hang out with Emphas, go home, feed her cat, and then go to bed. Just like a week of having the ability to take space and like hang out with people she cares about. Because I was like, I feel like this character deserves that after all of this. They get to have this life here. that they've really genuinely built. And like, part of my decision with Lemon Mina is that like, the decision to bring Lemon Mina along is dependent on you having to go. And one, my sleeper wasn't ready to go. And two, Mina's happy there. Like, that's the thing, like, Mina has friends and community, and the person who's driving them off is Lem because he's afraid of what being there means. And after doing all of this work to try and make the Eye a better, more habitable place, after doing a ton of work doing community building in the low end, the thing at the end of the game was I wanted to prove to him that this was a good place to live, and it's a place worth living. And so at the end, the final ending I got was his, and he talks about the 3-body problem, where he's like, we are now 3 bodies affecting one another infinitesimally forward. And that is good, and I'm glad I'm here. And I was like, yeah, this is perfect.
I was worried about that ending, and in like the way that my character got to that scene was still very much in the like headspace of like the Eye isn't home yet, right? Like I hit that one like right in the like in between moment, and I felt like too big of a decision for me to make for them. But I'm glad to hear that it ends up like you were saying earlier, like the endings aren't like really bad, quote unquote bad versions. It's just the version you chose of those separate endings still playing out in like, you know, good or interesting ways.
There's a question from Liv. Hello, snoozers.
Goofy.
It's good. It's
Goofy.
good. How did you folks handle the emotional weight of Citizen Sleeper's storytelling? I had multiple tear-filled breakdowns around real-life similarities to needing expensive medicines to deal with chronic pain. What self-care do you use if a game drops reality on you? Love all that you do, Liv.
Usually something like, I mean, this is obviously going to be personal for everyone, but like I tend to have to break it up into chunks. If like a particularly hard scene happens and I'm like, damn, I gotta sit with that for a bit, I'll go play something kind of more tactily forward, like you know, like an arcadey sports game or something where I can turn like the emotion part of my brain off for a little bit, but still have like kinetic experience.
Different.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that, and or like go like do some errands or something, like really disconnect fully from just playing games. But like if I'm like sitting down and I'm like, this is the only time I have to play games, but something hit me particularly hard, I definitely I go to like the opposite end of like, okay, I'm gonna pull up Roller Champions now and just fucking roll around and throw a ball around, and that's what I'm gonna do while I process.
Game.
It's a good game. It's a good game, and it's free. Okay.
and it's not like Diablo Immortal where it just like wants to crack open your wallet.
I mean, it does in so far like you gotta buy like things to make you look cool.
It's probably all cosmetics, right?
Yeah, and that's chill. You can buy some cosmetics, buy some hair.
Yeah, and then I thought Citizen Sleeper especially felt so well designed to be played in. I mean, I know Ren did not do this. I believe Ren did the exact opposite of this, which was got a code for Citizen Sleeper and then played for 8 hours. And you can do that. That's you can shotgun. You know this game. You can, but I was like Cado, where like I would finish little arcs and then be like, that feels good. Like I'm gonna set this down, go do something else.
Yeah.
And regardless of, I mean, certainly more so when it was like emotionally charged, but even like absent that, like I really enjoyed even though the game doesn't have like quote unquote levels, there were lots of moments that felt like like I did something that felt really satisfying. I'm gonna take a break, come back, and I'll put another 90 minutes into the game later.
For me, the order of operations is actually reversed in terms of the having a bad feeling from a video game. And then, like, instead for me, I generally use media to process emotions. There was a really long period in my life for probably about 4 years. This only changed very recently, where I never cried and would only cry at media. That was the only thing that could actually get me to cry, was moments in media that felt resonant. Even after like experiencing a lot of grief, I just couldn't. And so for me, media is something that I use to process, and difficult media specifically is what I use to process emotions, because I'm not someone who can really pull away from things. Putting something at a distance or being like, that was really heavy, I've got to go think about that, does not work for me. I cannot distract myself. And so instead, I kind of have to tackle every problem I have, or every emotion, directly and immediately, or it will just weigh on me for too much time. And so that's part of why I beat Citizen Sleeper all in one sitting, is because I was like, I want to directly engage with this right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that the game does a really good job of letting me do that, of letting all three of us take our own approaches to like processing like the difficult shit that the game often talks about. And I think for me to note one thing this person says about the heaviness of like the game being about chronic illness is that I also played the game during a pretty bad spike in my narcolepsy, because I was out of medication in April when we got the code. And so it was actually really cathartic to engage with a story that has that much hope for living and finding community with people in chronic illness, and the ability to be treated outside of capitalism. Because I think there's often this fear that if capitalism is a system, even if it were to break down, well, what happens to me? My medicine is hard to make and costs $10,000. What do trans people do when the medical establishment can't actually provide hormones? And Citizen Sleeper's answer is that communities build the tools to support those people and make those medications. The sleeper, through working with the commune, is able to develop a substitute for the stabilizer. People are biohacking estrogen every day now. And so it was deeply hopeful. And I think most media ends up being deeply hopeful and makes it easier to process heavy emotions.
A really good, I didn't really make the connection until right now when you're making those points, Ryan, but a really good narrative companion piece of this is, I feel like not enough people watch this show, Station 11 on HBO Max, which is it's based on a book. It's one season. It was, the showrunner was one of the head writers on The Leftovers, which is also a show that is extremely bleak and dark and about grief, but is also incredibly hopeful about that process. Station 11 is it's a post-apocalyptic story. It technically is about a flu-like virus that kills 99% of the population. That's the premise, but it doesn't wallow in that. I mean, it impacts the storytelling, obviously, but it is a show in which most post-apocalypse stories are about a Mad Max sort of situation. How would people tear each other apart when all the structures that we are used to fall apart? Well, they'd all kill each other and they'd all eat each other and be fighting for water. Station 11 is no, actually, just new communities would form and people would support each other. There'd be conflict. There would still be death. There would be violence in the ways that, of course, are going to happen as a result of, a lot of humans, or in this case, fewer of them, but still many of them interacting with one another. But actually just new community bonds would form. There's an episode in the show that's what happens when there are no hospitals for mothers to give birth in? It's people make their own structures and they make it work. And it's the answers they arrive at are really fascinating and interesting. And it's also a show that's very hopeful about people and what they would do in the absence of the structures that we've come to rely on. So if you liked this, even though it's not sci-fi, I find a lot of narrative through line in Station 11. And it's just an extraordinary show that I felt kind of got overlooked.
Yeah. I mean, people are delicate machines built for feeling. That is what the human body does. It is a weird, fucked up machine that is designed to take in an obscene amount of sensory input and process it. And it's really overwhelming and terrible. But community is the way to process that collectively. Mm-hmm. And media, to me, and art is always an extension of community. And so in the same way that like leaving to go play something else is a way of processing emotion with other people and like taking your mind off things, so too is me throwing myself into media when things get bleak. I think it's neat. People are cool.
This touches on something that we already kind of discussed, but I just wanted to reiterate it. Was I alone in constantly going back to the apartment to feed the stray cat? We, the Citizen Sleeper community, demand a dedicated stray cat ending. I'm with you, anonymous.
I think that's the ending that me and Ren got. Is the stray cat? You go back and you keep feeding the cat every once in a while.
You live there.
And you feed the cat.
There and you have a cat.
Yeah.
Like the cat hangs out with you. That is having a cat. I regret to inform you, that is what having a cat is.
I guess I think there's no event, right? And I think there's actually
there's
one
the
of the
one, right? Just at the beginning. But that's it.
Yeah, what unlocks it being a repeatable action. But then beyond that, there's no like, oh, hey, like meet the cat, describe the cat. You know what I mean? Like it just sort of, you have to imagine those things are occurring. And I think like in conjunction with the way the game doesn't tell you about its, potential fail states. I kind of like the fact that this question is even asked, because it's the game being very smart about what it does and doesn't do with its storytelling. It's like, well, no, like storytelling is occurring. It's just like you're not getting a scripted response from, the writer. And I think that's cool. The fact that you want the stray cat ending, like, is a compliment to the way this game handles its narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick,
but if they wanted to add like a stray cat ending,
that'd be sick.
That might get me to go back into the game.
Well,
I didn't see any of the other endings.
That's something
but I might go back for that.
That's something that I found interesting about it actually sending you back, even though you chose that ending. Is like I kind of assumed that it would just end, and like I understand the choice to like let you go back, but like it felt pointed that when I chose not to join, credits rolled still, but then it spits you back out. Like I was a little worried actually, and minorly upset that after choosing to go back, I thought I wasn't gonna get to continue, because the point of me going back was to go help those other people. But the game luckily is like, yes, actually that is the point. You can continue if you want.
Also, just the piece of writing for rejecting a river is just gorgeous. It is just like, it is one of the most human things I've read in a minute. Just the feeling of describing coming back into your body and realizing that someone is holding your hand it's really sweet. It's really sweet and well delivered. And I enjoyed it a lot. Good video game. Especially someone who like spent all this time supporting you and giving you the resources to be able to support yourself. And like, it's the fact that you wake up to the woman who made it so that you don't need stabilizer anymore. Because you helped her and she is holding your hand and you're there and it's fine. As you were saying, Patrick.
I didn't experience this because I didn't go down this quest far enough. But the two of you, sounds like this was one that you've thought about. The side rail going away to found a new colony is a common theme in space capitalism stories. It's usually either a tale of frontierism or one of various utopian visions coming to ruins when the ship reaches its destination or not. I didn't feel a sense of hope in the opportunity to board that ship. I'm not sure if that's a cynicism about the allure of green fields, particularly those funded by a giant corporation seeking freedom from bureaucracy, or a simple fear of the unknown. But Lem wanted to believe things would be different. Did you believe?
I definitely didn't. Like the entire end of that was quest line was really fraught. At one point I tried to see if there was a spoilerless, like how many ways can this go type of walkthrough, and like didn't really. I was like, no, never mind. I'm just gonna play it out, because I think this is what my character would do. Is that like I wanted to. I didn't believe, especially with the caster stuff, right? Like caster coming up and being like, hey, I'm gonna if you're cool with it, I'm gonna use you to spy on this corporation. And that like made it feel a little bit better. It's like, okay, well, at least I'm gonna be helping undermine some of the corporation's stake in this if I do end up getting on this ship. And like, I'm so glad there was the last second eject. Like, it felt so right for me to have the last second eject of like seeing Lem and Mina get on the ship, but then like backing off and like imagining and hoping that, you know, Mina gets to feel rain on her skin in some future where they're happy again. But in general was very weary of the entire, like, what the ship was doing and represented. And like, you know, it very much like allegorically felt to me just like the way that certain hopeful and peaceful futures for people is inextricably becomes tied up with capitalist structures. And there was part of me that wanted to make Lem see that, but I played a little too much into like not knowing whether or not destroying those tickets was gonna cause him to like hate me or something. Like I wish I could have had the discussion with them before the opportunity came up, because then I would have maybe had the discussion. Instead, I kind of followed through because I couldn't talk with Lem before being like, okay, I have these tickets, right? Which is, I mean, an interesting way to set up that conflict, and like played out kind of beautifully for my character's arc.
For me, it didn't matter if my sleeper really believed, because like, my sleeper could believe that place would have been great and that utopia was possible there, but that belief was overridden by my character's belief that utopia was possible there. The I has already done the work of breaking from capitalism once.
Yeah.
Or partially breaking from capitalism once. Fang continued that work. People in the low end are continuing that work. The low end, where Lem and Mina live, like, when the end of the low end arc is one of my favorites in the game, because you see what was once like a slightly aggressive community institution get reformed into something that is primarily focused on community care and not like pressuring one another. And so for me, for as much as the side rail could have been another utopia, the I was the one that I lived on already.
Right.
And was the one that Lem and Mina lived on already. Like, there is the things that Lem and Mina want are there. There is a place with green skies and like a self-sustaining ecosystem. It's just over there. Get on a ferry and you can go there. And that is the thing that I actually wanted from the Lem and Mina ending, was the opportunity to go places with them and be like, hey, like, to spend more time with Mina and like take her to different parts of the ship and have her realize how sick it is. And she does know how sick it is because she has friends there. And I didn't want to take her away from them.
We've covered all the other questions that people sent in across the discussion. Is there any other closing thoughts?
I'm super curious what you all thought or felt about the sleeper situation. Like the actual sleeper situation. Because the bits that we get of it are very interesting, and I'm curious how y'all read it. About like,
what do you mean?
Your past, like where you come from. Like we get that, yes, there's some sort of contract signed with a corporation, and you were built and you were emulated from a like human being's mind. But how did you read what is up with that human being?
I didn't give a shit. Frankly.
Which is fair.
I just didn't care. And because the game doesn't spend a lot of time building out that past, like it's not as though this is a game where it's like, and your mysterious past will become, you know, or like you'll run into someone on the eye that, you know, is able to, you know, tell you what was up before you arrived here.
It's just the games. Yeah, it's just the bits that it did come through painted a very specific picture in my mind, and I was curious whether or not that like happened.
No, I think I was more interested in reading what the sleeper themselves represents than it was in unpacking the person's story. But I'm curious, how did you read the situation?
Well, part of me, and like I didn't mention this earlier because I wanted to have this point before talking about the decision I made at the green and like how difficult that was. Part of me feels like that person is still asleep. Like the things that we get, the hints that we get, people make allusions to the fact that the person that our mind is emulated from is in cryosleep at the corporation. Like they are not living a life right now. They are simply waiting for your contract to be done, and then they get to wake up. Which is kind of a bleak fucking thing. And here's the thing though, what's interesting about this is that in fiction, the idea is that if your body dies and like then the contract is up and like they let that person go, and like that person like won't be accruing money anymore or whatever the contract was exactly. But it actually made a really compelling case for the becoming part of the ship ending that Patrick chose, where that in my mind I was like, shit, if I become part of the ship and let my body die, that person gets to wake up. Like maybe that is also worth it.
Wouldn't that also necessarily in that reading of it, I guess like if you disable your tracker, by all accounts the sleeper is dead. And you know what I mean?
I wonder if
that would also cause.
I wonder, but it was something about the way that it was talked about, and maybe this is just because of the order I hit things in. Maybe like that is technically the case, but like I remember the bits that I heard was something about like your body, like dying had to be the thing. But maybe cutting the tracker is enough for them to let them go. But anyways, that was what was in my mind when I got to the choice to whether or not to become part of the green or not, and like making it kind of added an extra twist of like pang to like, did that just kind of doom did staying kind of doom the person that I came from's life at the end? Like you don't really know, right? Like there is there is kind of no way to know, and ultimately you kind of have to like it feels more like a metaphor of letting the past go and making a better future for yourself and the people around you, and like, you know, creating that community regardless of what the past might have, you know, had in it. But yeah, it was an interesting, like they only talk about it like 3 times total, I feel like, and it was interesting that it seemed to hint that person was still trapped.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that person effectively not only created a life, but created a life specifically to be sold into slavery.
Right.
To a corporation. And by the end of the game, like I not even by the end, by very early, I was like, okay, cool. You have made a person. They have as much right to life as you do. And so I'm going to play the sleeper as a human being with a full life who has the right to it as much as the person who built them did.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to make the choice, even if the game was like, oh, you can have the other original. No, never. Not if it meant leaving this place that I cared about.
Yeah, especially by the end. I think I got some of that information kind of in the midway point of and I thought maybe that would come to a head, but I actually enjoy that the game decides that is not the focal point here. It is not the past. The focal point is not the past. It is the present.
Yeah, I also think that like the sleeper as like a character construct and as a concept is really, really interesting. I've kind of talked about the intersection between chronic illness and queerness that I kind of see in the sleeper, but like the sleeper is one, chronically ill and dependent on a medical, like a capitalistic corporatized medical system, and stabilizer, one, but they're also immediately visually identifiable. When you walk down the street, everyone knows you are a sleeper. And that carries weight. And some people treat you like shit because of it. Other people are afraid of you or do not understand you. And so the ways in which the game understands chronic illness and queerness as inextricably linked in this specific body was so interesting to me and so clearly aligned with my understanding of my own queerness and my own chronic illness that like I had no interest in who that person was before. In the same way that, like, I often describe my own relationship to queerness as, like, no one died, but someone grew up to be a ghost. Right? There was not a clean break, but, like, yeah, that person's gone. And so, what do we do with what we have next? And so I focused entirely on the sleeper as a character construct.
Yeah, I definitely had a similar kind of starting point until I don't remember who says, maybe it was Caster. Felt like it might have been Caster who mentions it. When I first got like a sense of that being the truth of them is that they're still stuck under that capitalist constant. And that was the first time I like really even considered who that person was for a moment. But like, yeah, I think the game does a really great job of making the kind of like giving that sense of of being othered in a space. That both works for queerness and like for race. IMO, like there's a lot of resonant moments of like, oh yeah,
Right. God, the fact that the only other sleeper you encounter in the game is a corpse is just is just brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the person, Patrick, you didn't get to this. Wait, no, Cado, I forget. Did either of you see the person who comes to kill you?
No, I got the trap wrap
the second person after Ethan. No, I did not.
Okay, I did
because I treated that as a game over state. I was like, I like fucked around until I got like 3/4 through that countdown. I was like, all right, time to
finish off Fang's quest.
Yeah.
So I did meet him, and one of the many things that he reveals is that is just his job. Ethan was a bounty hunter, sure. Right. But this dude is the only thing he does is kill sleepers. The ship at the beginning of the game that you find a sleeper on, that you find like that the salvage yard guy tells you once had a sleeper on it.
Yeah.
Right? He was the one who blew up that ship. Like he was the assassin who killed every other sleeper you know there. Or who attempted to kill every other sleeper you know or encounter. And so it's, I don't know. I think it's a fascinating and terrifying dude. And I'm glad it got fucking ethered.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on, to end this conversation about Citizen Sleeper, a game. We all liked just a tiny bit. I think Rob's played it as well, so hopefully we'll get some of his thoughts, or he's working his way through it. So we'll have to get his thoughts on it. When he,
I'm sure
returns.
We'll talk about Severance, and then that will also
that seems to be
up.
Well, because he took today off, and we're gonna I think we're doing a Severance podcast later this week, and he was like, "Don't worry, I'm just gonna launder my Severance thoughts through Citizen Sleeper." I was like, "Okay,
yeah, that works."
The other way around.
Citizen Sleeper thoughts through Severance.
So, So look forward to that later this week. I'm excited to watch those final 2 episodes because I've heard so much about the finale to that show. Yeah, I know. That's the noise everyone makes. Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I can't wait. That's hopefully what I'm going to do tonight. So that is going to do it. That's a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint. Our theme music is Bo N. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. You can learn more at waypoint.zone/Bo N. You can follow me at Patrick Klovic. Ren, where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Ren or Raven.
Cado.
At _Cado_appears.
Yeah, so we got the Severance pod. Ren, you and Rob are going to do some more Warhammer, I think?
Probably.
What else do we got? More Payday? Right?
I'm not quite sure.
Possibly.
Quite sure. Maybe.
This is the beginning of the summer of games.
Right. Yes. We we'll clarify our plans on that on Twitter. But yeah, we are at least going to we're gonna live stream and chat about the Jeff Keighley thing on Thursday. The Microsoft Bethesda thing on Sunday. Had I known there'd be as many kind of bangers in that PlayStation one, which we can talk about when we do the other ones.
We should.
Final Fantasy trailer looks pretty fucking good. I'm excited about that game. So we're gonna do a couple of those. Talk over those over the weekend as we lead up to this like kind of pseudo E3. And then then we'll be getting together later this month, which I'm very excited about. At least until COVID ruins all of it. Now I'm like so worried because I like either had it and never knew it, or like we're getting through the end of like, you know, like getting on the other side of the current spike in a lot of places, like especially in where I'm at. But it's like, I've got this thing, you know, I'm coming out to see all y'all in 2 weeks. I have like my first major family vacation in 2 years, like in the middle of July. And I'm just like, fuck, man. Like, this is like the one run, like, I really don't want to get it because it would impact a lot of other things. So we'll cross our fingers, but we'll be back later this week with some sort of regular pod. I think we're going to record it after the Keeley thing, and but we'll let everyone know as that gets along. But thanks everyone for watching. Fuck capitalism. Fuck space capitalism. Go home.
Nice, good, yeah.
Good pod.
And then you should just put in that clip of Biden telling Musk to go to the moon.
Oh my god!
You just put that at the end. That would make me
Fucking
laugh.
Christ.
That dude's a dipshit, but that line was extremely funny and made me laugh many times.
Yeah, laughing that sort of like, haha, oh god way.
Yep. Go to the moon.
Oh, fuck. Great pod, y'all. That was really fun.
Yeah.
That was a really good one.
Glad we got to talk about that game. It's
Yeah,
so good.
glad we managed to sneak that in. So,
Fucking great. Here's the link, y'all. Drop your files when you can.
Oh yeah, I'll do that right now before I go eat lunch.
Yeah, because well, that's not shit. That's not.
What's going on, Cado?
I was looking something up. There we go.
I guess you could have pasted worse things.
I was looking something up. I was Googling.
Yeah, that's hotbabes.net. No,
doing research
Just
for my screenplay.
My screenplay. This is Minecraft.net.
my screenplay can have hot babes. I can do whatever I want in my screenplay.
That specific intonation of my screenplay has been stuck in my head for years.
Is that from?
That's how I imagine.
Why does it sound
the
like
famous tweet? My wets. That's how I imagine that
my
voice.
wits.
My wits.
It reminds me of the fucking scientist from The Simpsons. That's what that is pulling in my mind. You know.
Someone talked about on a thing I was listening to once about their tendency, no matter what they drop, if they drop literally any object, they go, my screenplay. And then that bit became so stuck in my head.
That's a very funny bit.
The development of the voice was extremely fun.
Nice.
My screenplay. Also, my Werner Herzog is getting excellent. Just a side note.
We all got to work on our skills, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's apparently a place near me called Benny's, which is like a French like patisserie and coffee shop.
For a second, I thought you said a Denny's. Like a place called Denny's?
Some weird
as
restaurant called Denny's?
As a woman from Ohio, how dare you suggest that I am not familiarized with the Denny's franchise?
I thought that was extreme. Would be very funny to be propose that to another person. Have you heard?
We've heard a good word.
My brother in Christ, have you heard the word?
It's
Denny's.
like a food, but whoa.
That would be a good tagline. It's like food, but whoa. All right, should we go to time that is? I'm recording.
Like if you turned up the gain on a restaurant.
It's true. And that game goes up the later it gets.
God.
And nothing changes about the restaurant. It changes about you.
No. Well, I mean, the restaurant is changed by the audience.
Yeah.
God. Same thing goes for like a Steak and Shake. They're very different establishments, but the gain does get turned up on Steak and Shake progressively because without fail, there is a bunch of theater kids who just got off their last performance.
Steak and Shake is very teen focused.
Yeah,
that's my experience with it.
Theater kids who just got off their last performance, or there is a convention in town, and there are 24 people at one table, and all of them are yelling because they do not do social interaction off the internet. Those are my Steak Shacks experiences. I was part of those groups both times and was extremely, extremely embarrassed and anxious both times.
Should we clap, Cado? Ready?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Y'all can clap whenever.
That's right. Fuck.
Do you want to do... let's do 57.
You want to pick, Ren? Let me know. What number you want to do?
Can we do 57?
Sure.
Sorry, I got excited.
Let's put a marker right there.
A marker on my recording. I don't even know how you would do that. I don't even know how
Disgusting.
Can you do that in Audacity? I have no idea. Probably.
Probably. I wouldn't hit any buttons while Audacity's recording, though.
I'm not going to hit.
I don't even look at Audacity while it's recording for fear of upsetting it.
Yeah.
Like, if Audacity is recording, I am giving it space. I am giving it privacy.
You go do what you need to do over there.
I will go hang out in a different room while Audacity does its work.